Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and this week it'll just be me for this week. I know that's been happening more and more recently, that there's just been episodes that have just been me, but, it's not always the easiest thing to get people to record, and I apologize sincerely for that, and, don't worry, I've got some really good episodes planned with some really great guests. Hopefully next week's episode will be, I have an episode planned to record for next week, and I've got a guest for that. So hopefully I will be able to get that episode out to you guys by then. So for this week's episode, I will be covering Dog Day Afternoon. And I will say, actually, before I continue on and begin talking about this film, any episodes I've done where it's just me talking, I will more than likely cover. There's a very good chance I will cover them again in the future and redo these episodes, because then it's just me, and that's not always the most interesting. So I will attempt to, in future, probably do some of these episodes again in the future. So yeah, Dog Day Afternoon is the film I'll be talking about this week. So for those who don't know, I'm going to talk sort of generally about the film, and then I'll go into some spoiler territory, and yeah. And I'm also just going to say up front, I don't feel like I need to plug everything. I'm just going to plug everything out. So go to the website, check it out, at the movies, williamfletcher.com. You should be able to find it. Check out our Facebook and Instagram pages. Check out my Letterboxd page where you can see all these ratings I'm giving. And that's pretty much it, really. So, Dog Day Afternoon. For those who don't know what it is a film directed by Sidney Lumet that came out in 1975. And the film, it's for those who might not know who Sidney Lumet is, his directorial debut was 12 Angry Men, which is a fantastic film that I am very tempted in doing on an episode of the podcast, because I watched it once, but that was like when I was 14 or so. It was a few years ago. But that's a different story. This is Dog Day Afternoon. So it's about a real life person who existed. It's about a bank. So basically, the basic premise of the film is there's Al Pacino, who is really good in this film. I'm just going to say that. He's really good. This might be the best performance I've seen him give in anything. And so the film is about this real life bank robbery. So there's these two bank robbers. They rob this bank, but everything goes wrong. It doesn't turn out exactly how they want it. And pretty much most of the film takes place in the one location, which is the bank, as well as the nearby, the street and, across the road. But it's predominantly just Al Pacino, his partner, bank robber, the people who were in the bank at the time, and the main police officers who are dealing with this. And this is based off a true story, and I haven't done much research into it, but I don't know how I think it's sort of disputed on how accurate the film is. It very much depends on who you ask. But to put my cards on the table up front, I thought this was a really, really good, enjoyable piece of work. I'm a really big fan of 12 Angry Men, and Sidney Lumet with another great film here in Dog Day Afternoon. Sorry, I was just itching myself there. So yeah, it's a really great film, and I'm just sort of gonna talk spoiler free, and then when I'm gonna go into spoilers, I will give you, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll give you a heads up. Is pretty much what I'll do. So yeah, so it stars Al Pacino in the lead role of Sonny, and he is really, really good in this film. This is probably the best performance I've seen him give. And it's very much like this was. Yeah, it's just he's really good in this film. He gives a really good performance. There's times where he's doing the classic Al Pacino thing, where he's just yelling all the time. And then there, so it sort of switches between because half the time he's like yelling and being very loud and doing the classic like Al Pacino thing, and then on the other side he's got this bits where he's very where he's very quiet, very restrained and pulled back, and he's very restrained. He's very pulled back, and but it sort of is like a perfect balance of those two. Of like sometimes he's really loud and he's yelling at people, and then on the other side, there's some really good conversations he has with his partner and with the police where he's very quiet and he's very sort of subdued and I think Al Pacino because some people sort of think of Al Pacino and I guess other people like also like I guess Joe Pesci is another one who everyone is just like, oh, he yells all the time and he gets angry and yeah, it's cool, And sort of that's the thing I think Al Pacino is sometimes saddled with is that people think he's just this one thing, but he's a lot more than that. He's not just this, he's not this guy who yells all the time. He can have some really good emotional, like quiet moments, and I think that's sort of like it depends on the film he's doing, of course, and how everything is, but that's predominantly what he's known for the getting loud, the yelling stuff, but he also has some very good quiet moments as well. And I think, not as many people focus on that part, I guess you could say. Then I'll also just say that all the other performances in this film are really, really great as well. They all work spectacularly well. There's no dud of a character. There's no character that you're just like, oh, well, I don't really care for them, or you're just like, I'm not really interested. Like all the characters in the film all get a moment to shine. They're all very well written, and there's no just character who's just sort of saddled in the background. And there's quite a few characters because there's Sonny, who is the Al Pacino character. There's Sal, who is his confidant. There's all the people in the bank. There's like I think 8 people or so in the bank, and then there's then there's Sonny's partner and his kids, and there's the police officers who are trying to negotiate and figure this whole thing out, and it they're all very very well written performances. It's a very well written film, a very well written script, and I think that like if the film sort of if the script wasn't better, it the script because I would argue that script is one of the most like I'd argue the three most important parts of a film is you need an actor, you need a script, and you need a camera. Those are like the three important parts. Those are like the three basic things you need to make a film. You need an actor, a script, and a camera. That's like the bare minimum you need to make a film. And you know, yeah, and yeah, just all the performances in this are very well written. There's so many bits in the film where you can just tell like because there are some bits where there's lots of like Al Pacino, he's yelling and stuff, and there's other bits where he's very restrained. It very much depends on the scene because he's not just yelling all the time for the sake of it. Sometimes he is very pulled back and restrained and very quiet when he's like talking on the phone, with people. And other times he's just really loud and everything, and he's really loud. It very much depends on the scene because he sort of goes the right level for each scene. It's sort of like I guess to put it sort of simply, I would argue it's sort of like I guess like it's sort of like a Nicolas Cage. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say it's sort of like a Nicolas Cage thing, but I don't think he's as mental as Nicolas Cage is because Nicolas Cage does like whatever he wants. Like Nicolas Cage just goes nuts. He just yells and he screams and he just goes all the way with all his performances. And Al Pacino is a little more different than that. Not to say that Nicolas Cage is bad because I'm not. Because I love Nicolas Cage because who doesn't? It is Nicolas Cage. But it very much depends on the context. Because sometimes Nicolas Cage can be like very blur, very loud, and very expressive and stuff, and I don't think we can quiet. And I think a lot of people associate him more with the loud and mental stuff, and that's sort of how I look at people like Al Pacino and Joe Pesci are the two predominant ones I can think of off the top of my head, who people very much look at as like they're just always loud, they're always yelling, they've always got big performances, and then they don't notice when they've got the more quiet and subtle moments. So yeah, all the performances are really good. I think Al Pacino gives the best performance in the film, and there's a really great scene where Al Pacino. So okay, I'm gonna go to spoilers now. So there's a twist. So early in the film, Sonny, who is the Al Pacino character, he talks about how he wants his wife and his kids there because you know that's just how it is. And so there's a twist in the film. Again, spoilers, that Sonny has had relate is married to a man by the name of Leon, who who wants to have basically the bank robbery was being done in the context of the film. I don't know how accurate this is for the actual thing, but in the film, Sonny and Sal, who is his partner, are robbing this bank so they can get the money to give Leon, Sonny's partner, the money for gender reassignment surgery because Leon, thinks that he is, identifies as a woman. And so that was the whole reason that the robbery was taking place, was so that they could pay for the gender reassignment surgery. But they find out when they rob the bank that there is only $1,100 in cash in the bank. So, they're just sort of wondering like what to do, and they're not entirely sure. And so yeah, so most of the film takes place within this bank with Sunny, Sal, and all the hostages they've got in the bank. So so they've got the main guy who like runs the bank. Then there's all the tellers and the women who work there, and I think a couple other customers. And there's also a security guard. And there's a bit where the security guard has an asthma attack, and he's brought out to the So he's brought out because he's gonna, how do I say it? I don't, well, because he's having like an asthma attack, and so they're just like, oh, we should probably take him out. So they send him out, and they put him out, and they take him out. But unknowingly, the police believe that he is. Well, some of the police believe that he is part of the um like that he is part of the thing, and that he's one of the robbers. And I think that I don't know if that was intended or not. But I think that's a very interesting like what's like social commentary, I guess, that they see this black man coming out and they assume that he is, a robber, that he's one of the robbers. I think that I don't know if that was intended or not, but I think that's very interesting social commentary that the film has. Again, I don't know how intended that was, but it seems like there's a very decent possibility that that could have been that was part of the reason. That could have been something that influenced it. So yeah, and the film opens. It has multiple like establishing shots, which base it's got a bunch to establish like where they are, like the city they're living in, where everything is, where people are living, where the sort of area. And there's opening shots at the beginning of the film that establishes where the bank is and all that stuff. And so when because and it establishes everything because we're going to spend most of the time in this bank and just outside across the street, and then the place across the street, And I think that's very good that it establishes everything so that we know where everything is, and thus, we're able to familiarize ourselves with it all. And sorry, so that we can familiarize ourselves with it all, and know the layout of everything. Know how everything's situated in the station. Where the police, um, where the bank is in relation to like this, the nearest like places where people are working. And I think that's just a really good thing that helps the film. Everything is established. Where everything is, and it all just works. So, what other? So I'm just looking at the notes that I've got. So I made a note very early on that this film is already great. I think that was like maybe 30 minutes in, if even, and it was just like because it goes into like the bank robbery or attempted robbery rather happens very early on. Like they are not wasting time; they just get right into it, and I appreciate that they're not beating around the bush. That like they just go in for it, and that the that they're just going for it, and that they just they're not going to waste time. They're not going to faff about, I guess, as you could say. They're just going to go with it, and boom, everything's there. And I think that's fair enough. I don't think you can really, you know, disagree with that. Like, because it just makes sense that you should just get right into it and just begin the story because it just seems very interesting, not just go for it. So I'm just gonna, yeah. So what else happens in the film? It's kind of interesting because at the beginning of the film, so beforehand they've got another person that Sonny and Sal have got a third person who they're gonna have help them with this thing, but they chicken out and they leave. So it's just Sal, and so they just walk in and they immediately just pull out their guns and they're just like ready to go with it all. And like they just get right to it. There's a bit very early on where Sonny he's holding a gun. It's like a rifle or shotgun in the face of like the bank teller, and the bank teller is oddly very calm. And I don't know, like it just it's just very interesting. I don't know if that was on purpose or if the actor just couldn't didn't care less. I just thought it was a very interesting touch. I guess it also depends, They've probably got some training, you know. I mean, I guess it depends. I just thought it was a very interesting touch. And the film has a very nice the characters are very much like Sal and Sonny. They're very much they're very much very much early. Like it establishes that the bank robbers aren't bad guys. Like that it's very much more shades of gray. They're just good. They're just like people who are robbing a bank. They're not doing it for a bad reason. They're doing it to help with gender reassignment surgery. They're not bad guys. They're just not decent people who are just doing a bad thing. Like because they don't want to hurt anyone. They don't want to shoot anyone. They don't want to do any of that. They just are like we're just doing you know they just want money. That's all it is. Then that's what I think works is their characters have got varying shades of grey. That they're not just bad people. They're just they don't want to hurt or kill people. They're just you know like it's just very much like you know. And plus, it also shows that Sonny is very smart and he knows what he's doing. He knows all the things about banks, how they're insured, and where the alarms are, and all these various things. And it shows that like he's done his research. He knows what he's doing. And I think that, I think that's just very interesting to have, a very smart person. Again, haven't seen this. What I have seen it, sorry. I don't know how accurate it is to real life, but that is, just sort of. I think with these kinds of films, they can't be 100% accurate because I don't know. Because not all of it would be interesting enough to put, accurate. I think it very much depends. So, yeah, there's a real. I noticed as I was watching, and I didn't notice, or it just wasn't there at all. But like well, as I was watching it, there was like basically no score in the film. It's just like it's just like natural sounds, footsteps, gunshots, rustle, like sliding across the floor, like moving, like rustling of like chair wheels and stuff. Is rustling the word to use for that? Moving of chair wheels across like the carpet, and yeah, it's yeah, it's very yeah, and there's several great moments in the film where they contrast. Like it's like very quiet and sort of together in when they're in the bank. It's very quiet and very quiet, and then they cut to the airport because Sonny. Then he makes a bargain. He makes a deal with the police to get him a plane. And I'm not going to give away the ending in this because I don't. I'm not going to. I don't want to give away the ending. But basically, he wants a plane to get out. And there's great contrast in editing of showing the very loud, bustling airport to the very quiet, very small, restricted bank. And I'm always a fan of contrast, between something to what, like something that's very loud and busy and all that, and just cutting to like something very small and intimate. And yeah, that's really good. And yeah, and the film also there's lots of great bits of the story progressing. They make a point that the air conditioning is off, and over the course of the film, you notice that the characters in the bank are getting progressively sweatier and sweatier, and I think like that's good attention to detail to just be like they're getting sweaty and sweaty. It's very hot because they can't leave either. And I think that's just really, good attention to detail to progressively make them more and more sweaty. And, sort of similar to 12 Angry Men. And if you notice that film, they get more and more sweaty as the film goes on because it's the hottest day of the year and everything like that. And, that's just brilliant. You know, yeah, it's just really good. It also moves very fast. It doesn't feel like 2 hours. I was like, when I checked the time on like how much longer left, and it was like so little time left. I was like, man, this is moving really fast. I wasn't expecting this to be going as fast as it was because yeah, it's just very interesting. Ugh, sorry, and it's just like very sorry, you know, because it's over 2 hours, and it could very much it could drag, and you could feel like, man, this could go for this might drag, because some films can drag, but the film doesn't. It's very. I don't. Slow sounds bad. Not slow. Sorry, the opposite of slow. It's fast. It moves at a breakneck pace. The dialogue is quick. It's snappy. It works. It gets to the point. Everything just works perfectly together. Everything works perfectly in sync. And this. Yeah, it's just a really, really great scene. There's a probably the best scene in the film, in my opinion, is a phone conversation between Sonny and Leon, where it's basically they're just talking to each other about these things and why he's doing this, and all this stuff. And there's a scene earlier on with Leon, just Leon in the barbershop talking to the police about his backstory and how him and Sonny know each other. And again, a really good thing, and the actor playing Leon gives a really, really great performance in this film. It's not just Al Pacino giving a great performance. It's like it's a great ensemble cast of performances. There's one of my other favorite bits in the film is there's a bit where Sonny accidentally fires a gun is accidentally fired. I don't remember exactly if Sonny fires a gun, but a gun is accidentally fired, and it basically and there's really frantic editing, because people because the whole building is like surrounded by onlookers and bystanders, and so people they're diving down for cover. All the police are hiding behind cars. There's people trying to get into the back. They all dive for cover, and the editing is really fast and just moving, and it's just crazy, and everyone's just yelling and screaming and diving for cover. And I think that's a really good editing trick to just show the franticness and how everything, just how it all plays up and how it all works. And the editing, reflects how the characters are. Everything's just scrambling and moving fast and just blah 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 blah. And that's really good. And you know, that's just a good note for the editing. So yeah, I think I've talked about most of my main points with this film. I've got one flaw with the film, and it does involve the ending, so I'm not going to say it exactly. But for those who have seen it, one problem I have is the armrest bit. Also, close to the very end of the film, there's something involving an armrest, and that's my only problem with this film, and that is what keeps it down from being a perfect 10. So to get onto my score, Dog Day Afternoon, a phenomenal film, phenomenal performances, editing, writing, cinematography, sound design as well. It's all great, and that's why I'm giving Dog Day Afternoon a 9 out of 10. Very, very enjoyable film, very well made, and I cannot wait to see what my next Sidney Lumet film will be. I don't really know what I'm going to watch next for Sidney Lumet because he's got some really good stuff to watch. But yeah, already I've only seen two of his films, this and 12 Angry Men. Both are phenomenal and they are great films. Speaking of great films, before I wrap this up, 1975. This came out in 1975, which is looking back, is a really good year for movies because you had this, Dog Day Afternoon. You had Barry Lyndon, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Jaws, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, a really great year for films. And I don't know, because when you ask people about, best years in films, they rarely bring up 1975. But I think, if people look at this year more closely, they'll realize that, yeah, this is a really great year for film. And Dog Day Afternoon is absolutely one of the best films from that year. So thank you all for listening to this episode. Check out the website, our Facebook page, our Instagram page. Check out my Letterboxd page where you can find my ratings for all these films. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.